Okay. You remember your field, right?
Okay.
Okay. I spoke to her, and
Good
she
morning.
has
Good
completed.
morning. So we are almost ready to start the third day of the summer training school at the University of Tuscia. Before launching the program for this third day, I really want to congratulate you all for the brilliant performance during the first training. I and the trainers were really impressed by the competence and professional attitude you all the groups demonstrated during the first training. It was not easy at all because you had a limited time and you had to select the information and to convey to the audience the relevant elements of your analysis. You did well. I mean, all the groups did quite well. You also had to face further difficulties because some of you were online, other people were on premise, and it couldn't be taken for granted that we had a good result in the end. So congrats. Today and tomorrow you are going to experiment a different technique because you're going to deal with the technique of collective brainstorming, and you are performing in the plenary session as a round table. So this exercise is going to be a dialogue, a collective dialogue. It's important to boost and master also, the oral skills, and that's why we wanted to have this second training in a more operational and in boosting the speaking attitude. So just to give you an idea what is going on this afternoon and next afternoon, tomorrow afternoon. But it's now time to start the teaching session, so the morning session. And I'm really glad to introduce you the first speaker of this third day. Our teaching program is following a line. So we started from the definitions. We started from understanding what do we mean by community sponsorship, what do we mean by competitive models, resettlement, and so on. Then on the second day, we went deep down in some key legal issues such as non-discrimination and additionality and other key principles steering this field of migration policies. We also had a chance to understand the differences between humanitarian admission, resettlement, and labor pathways. Today, we had a chance to do a comparative study with the two speakers of the morning session. So we will have a look at different models of community sponsorship and associated pathways from north, south, and south perspectives. So developed by countries of origin and destination, which belongs to different parts of the world, which is a sort of conclusion and also addition to the work you did during the first training. So the first speaker of the morning session is Dr. Marilu Porchia. Marilu is a research fellow at the University of Tuscia, where she is a member of the COSME project and where she holds some chairs as a contract professor of international law at the DAME department. She holds a PhD in international and European law from the University of Ferrara. And she's also one of the trainers of this summer training school. And her research focuses on asylum law, migrant detection, torture prevention mechanisms, and so on. So I'm really, really glad to leave her the floor for the first lecture of the morning, which is titled "A South-South Legal Pathway: Private Sponsorship Programs for Syrians in Argentina." So we are going to deal with the Argentinian case. Before handing over the floor to Marilu, I also want to thank Nicolò Acquarelli, who he is one of our trainer and who joined us for the morning session. Thank you very much, Nicolò, for being with us and for supporting the works of this summer training school today. So Marilu, the floor is yours for the next hour, and then we will have half an hour of a Q&A. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniela. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can you see the presentation?
Yeah, maybe if you don't put in full screen, it's even better for those who are at home because we would see it bigger. Yeah, so if you click on,
Okay.
that would be better. Yeah, thank you so much.
So good morning, everybody, and thank you again for being here. Today, I will discuss Argentina's evolving role in the field of community sponsorship for forcibly displaced persons, with particular attention in its pioneering Syrian program. This initiative, launched in 2014, marked the first community-based sponsorship model in Latin America and one of the earliest case of South-South resettlement axis. It offers an important case study in how South-South humanitarian cooperation and private sponsorship can intersect in response to mass displacement crisis. At the heart of this presentation lies a critical question: to what extent can privately sponsored state-enabled schemes serve as a viable and equitable mechanism for protecting displaced persons in situations where traditional state-led resettlement is absent, limited, or politically impossible? In examining this, I will trace the legal, institution, and operational dimension of Argentinian community sponsorship experience, assess its implication through the lens of global compacts, and suggest what lessons might be transferable or cautionary for other national contexts, particularly within the Latin American region. So Argentina launched the Programma Syria in 2014 through a ministerial resolution as a special humanitarian visa schemes for Syrian nationals and their families affected by the conflict. The legal form of the program, a ministerial resolution rather than a legislative act, reflected both the urgency but also the fragility of the initiative. From the outset, the program relied on a dual model of state authorization and private sponsors. The state will grant temporary humanitarian visas, while local sponsor, referred to as llamantes, will commit to providing accommodation, economic support, and integration assistance. The program included three phases. The first phases, 2014-2015, was highly centralized and largely dependent on informal coordination between the Minister of Interior, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and UNHCR. Admission was discretionary, and eligibility criteria were to be the relatives of up to 4 degrees of kinship of Argentine citizens, so family criterion. The second phase, 2016-2018, marked an expansion and institutionalization of the program. Under a resolution of 2016, a call was issued for religious organization, NGO, and municipality to register as sponsors. And civil society involvement increased, but so did bureaucratic inconsistency and delays, particularly in visa processing and pre-departure screening. The third phase, 2018-2020, witnessed a contraction of state involvement and the gradual dismantling of central coordination. While the normative framework formally remained in place, the actual implementation slowly dramatically, compounded by political transition and institutional fatigue. So through all phases, a striking feature of the Syrian programs was its reliance on civil society, not merely for integration support, but for the operational feasibility of the program itself. And this included not only housing and financial assistance, but also pre-departure documentation, medical arrangement, and often travel coordination. The state's role, though legally central, was functionally residual. And that was a problem. Despite its innovative character, the Syrian progress raises important concern regarding legal security, state responsibility, and long-term sustainability. One of the core challenges lies in the precarious legal status afforded to beneficiaries. The humanitarian visa issued under the program does not automatically cover refugee status, nor does it fall within a formal asylum procedure. As a result, protection is granted outside the framework of 1951 Refugee Convention and without individual status determination. This creates a legal gray zone where displaced persons are admitted on humanitarian grounds but remain outside the formal architecture of international protection. While this flexibility may offer pragmatic advance in emergency context, it also carries significant risk, particularly when protection is not anchored in binding rights or durable status pathway. Individuals admitted under the program may find themselves in prolonged legal limbo, depend on discretionary renewals and lacking access to regulation. A second limitation concerns the absence of additionality. Unlike many private sponsorship schemes in the global north, the Syrian program was not designed to complement a state-run resettlement program. Rather, it functioned as the only pathway for displaced Syrians seeking entry into Argentina. This stands in contrast to the logic of complementary pathways promoted in the Global Compact, which presuppose a baseline commitment by the state that is then expanded through community engagement. A third issue related to the scalability and coordination of the program. The heavy reliance on civil society, though commentable in terms of community solidarity, reveal institutional weakness and lack of strategic planning. Sponsorship arrangements were often fragmented, inconsistent, and depend on the initiative of particular organization or municipalities. Moreover, the absence of centralized data system or monitoring framework hampered effective evaluation and follow-up. And this structural weakness reflects not only administrative shortcomings, but also the political fragility of protection schemes grounded in ministerial discretion rather than legislative consensus. The program decline in the post 2018 period illustrates how easily humanitarian initiative can be deprioritized in the absence of institutional consolidation and sustained political will. In conclusion, the number of Syrian people that the program allowed to enter Argentina from 2014 to 2024, so 10 years, is less than 500, which is far cry from the 3,000 people announced by the then President Mauricio Macri to the international community only for the period 2017-2019. Well, despite the small number achieved by the program, it constitutes a fundamental step to develop new practice to support community sponsorship. The Syrian program experience has been taken up by the program of residence for humanitarian reason for Ukraine citizens, which enable a humanitarian visa and residence scheme for Ukraine citizens and their immediate family members, regardless of their nationality, in response to the crisis caused by the armed conflict in that country. Through this initiative, Argentina granted humanitarian residency to 158 Ukrainian nationals, 96 women and 62 men from February 2022 to June 2023. The regulation granted temporary protection status for up to 3 years. And upon the expiration of this period, beneficiary may apply for and obtain permanent residency in the country. The measure, such as the Syrian program during its first phase, could be considered a form of community sponsorship based on family ties. It is set up as an extended family reunification scheme, aiming to facilitate and guarantee family reunification of Ukrainian citizens. From one side, the ease of integration through family ties can constitute a program strength. From the other side, the programs share the same critical issues as the Syrian program. It lacks additionality, and more generally, there is a lack of commitment of the state, including financial commitment to the access and reception of displaced Ukrainians. Unsurprising, the only economic support provided by the state is the exemption for migration taxes. So the program also lacks information on the other form of protection to which beneficiary may have access to Argentina, and the limited scope given by the family criterion alone is questionable. Then, in May 2022, the National Migration Agency approved the special program from humanitarian visas for nationals and residents from Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean who were displaced to the such a natural disaster, resuming the implementation of the community sponsorship schemes to accompany the inclusion of beneficiary. Beneficiary will be granted an entry permit and a temporary visa on humanitarian grounds with a term of outright stay of 3 years. After that period, beneficiary will be allowed to improve their migration status towards a permanent residency. In addition to expanding them from the payment of immigration fee, it is granted that the people who want to be relocated to Argentina have access to housing, support, and guidance for the term of 1 year by means of sponsorship from an organization in civil society to collaborate with the integration process. The program is innovative in several ways. First is as an active, preventive, and permanent nature because it offers collaboration of the states in 23 countries in Latin American and the Caribbean before any disaster occurs, and there is no deadline for completion. Second, the target population is people who are subject to internal or cross-border displacement with a regular migration status or not, who apply for a visa from any of the 33 countries involved. By accepting the UNHCR invitation to extend the reach of the Syrian program to population of other origins, particularly those from Latin America, Argentina adopted a policy of regional protected access, evading the criticism that saw the Syrian program as a mere political visibility operation. On the other hand, the special program appears to be a virtuous initiative and certainly a good practice to be replicated in other countries, especially those bordering areas with high climatic and environmental risk. On the other hand, the same critical points remain as in the Syrian and Ukraine programs. In fact, the lack of additionality of the private sponsorship system remains, as does the lack of economic commitment of the part of the state. The entire financial management of the program once again seems to be the sole responsibility of the sponsor, who are responsible for the housing, the economic support, and the entire integration process of the beneficiaries. As already noted in the case of Syrians and Ukrainians, thanks to the broader definition of refugee offered by the Cartagena Declaration, the beneficiary of all 3 projects could aspire to international protection rather than being limited to humanitarian protection. However, the state does not take responsibility for offering this possibility, as there is no obligation to provide information to beneficiary on access to international protection rights and procedure once they arrive in Argentina. So they basically remain with the humanitarian status, even if they can access to international protection in all the 3 projects, all the 3 programs. In 2023, Argentina adopted the Resettlement and Complementary Pathways Plan. The program may fulfill the definition of community sponsorship since the beneficiary received integration support in Argentina from sponsoring organizations through the community sponsorship model. Beneficiary can be referred by UNHCR office abroad and selected through a process overseen by the Argentinian state. Alternatively, a sponsor may identify a beneficiary from Argentina, particularly when there is a family relationship. Sponsors are indeed connected with refugee family before their arrival in Argentina. Civil society organizations are under this program the only sponsor admitted. They need to demonstrate a proven track record.
Allora, un caffè, un'acqua
And
ghiacciata liscia e 2 cornettini
Up.
piccoli. Sono tutti vuoti?
I'm
Okay.
sorry, there is
Qual è quella?
someone. Well, okay.
Okay,
Sorry about
thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
So the civil society organization that can be admitted as sponsor under the Resettlement and Complementary Pathway Plan they need to demonstrate a proven track record in assisting and defending the rights of refugees, stateless person and those needing international protection. So in contrast from the other programs, in this kind of program, the single person cannot be a sponsor, just civil organization, just organization that already have experience in humanitarian assistance and housing. So compared to previous scheme adopted, the selection criteria of the resettlement and complementary pathway plan are clearly and precisely defined. The beneficiary of resettlement programs are refugee as defined by a law, and the 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugee, as well as the Cartagena Declaration. There are refugees who are survivors of violence or torture, LGBTQ refugees, and refugees without prospect for durable alternative solution. Also, stateless persons not recognized as refugees can benefit of the program, and individuals not recognized as refugee or stateless person, but deemed to be in need of international protection, may also be considered for resettlement. So the beneficiary of complementary admission programs are individuals in need of some form of international and/or humanitarian protection, both categories. And they include women at risk, including girls and adolescents, children and adolescents at risk, individuals with legal and physical protection needs. And this model appears to be more robust than the previous one, demonstrating that the lessons of the past have been learned, both in terms of the selection criteria for sponsor, but also for beneficiaries. Once again, however, the program suffers from structural deficiency that hinder its scalability and replicability in other countries. It lacks the additionality of private sponsorship in relation to programs managed entirely by the state, as well as a genuine and efficient public-private partnership model. The state takes no responsibility for the integration of beneficiary into the social environment of Argentina, a fact that must be outlined as unsustainable in the long term. So what lessons then can be drawn from Argentina experience in light of the global debate on private sponsorship and humanitarian pathways? First, Argentina illustrates the adaptive potential of community sponsorship in context behind the global north. The Syrian programs show that such models can be developed even in the absence of resettlement tradition or robust asylum infrastructure. However, adaptation without institutionalization risks incoherence, fragility, and selective protection. And second, the case highlights the importance of legal clarity and procedural safeguards. While flexibility may allow for rapid response, it should not come at the expense of legal certainty or fundamental rights. The lack of refugee status, unclear pathways to permanent residence, and the discretionary nature of visa renewal undermine the program protective value. Third, the Argentina case underscores the limits of community-based models in the absence of a state leadership. Civil society can innovate, mobilize resources, foster inclusion, but it cannot substitute for structural role of the state in defining eligibility, ensuring coordination, and guaranteeing rights. Private sponsorship, to be effective, must operate as part of broader protection system, not as a standalone measure. And finally, from a normative perspective, Argentina experience prompts reconsideration of what counts as international protection in practice. Many of the legal arrangements introduced by the Global Compact, such as temporary protection or humanitarian states, share only their nomen juris with formal categories recognized in domestic or regional law. The Global Compact provides no binding definition, leaving significant discretion to states in shaping their interpretation. In this sense, the Argentinian case demonstrates the pluralism and ambiguity that characterize the soft law architecture of contemporary protection. In conclusion, Argentina's contribution to private sponsorship in mass displacement situation reflect both promise and paradox. On one hand, the Syrian programs represents an early and contextually adapted model of community-based protection in the Global South, one that aligns in spirit with the vision of global compacts. On the other hand, its limitation reveal the difficulties of building protection framework without legal anchoring, adequate institutional support, or durable political commitment. Moving forward, any effort to develop sustainable and equitable sponsorship mechanism, whether in Argentina or elsewhere, must attend to the following imperatives: legal security, additionality, coordination, and inclusiveness. Sponsorship should not be seen as a substitute for state responsibility, but as a way of enhancing it by engaging communities, strengthening social cohesion, and expanding access to protection where former systems fall short. So, to conclude, Argentina offers a laboratory for community-based protection, but it's still a laboratory. They had different programs, different experience, but the numbers that programs reached were very few and were not enough to be a full resettlement program. And it showed the potential of flexible and culturally sensitive models, but still is a potential. Without the state support, this model cannot evolve. And a robust legal and financial framework is essential for lasting impact. It may be dangerous that other countries in Latin America will reply this experience only based on the efforts of sponsor of the community, because the role of the states must be stronger, the role of the states must be central, because there is a principle of responsibility sharing. If there is no responsibility sharing, cannot be a strong sponsorship schemes, it risks to undermine protection instead of increase protection for beneficiary. What I think is really important, what I think is really innovative from Argentina experience is that it expand the categories of beneficiaries. So it's not limited only to those people that match perfectly the status, the 1951 refugee status definition by the Geneva Convention, but open to other situations like climate change, displacement caused by environmental or climate change or disaster. And also they allow directly people from the country affected, for example, by armed conflict, to live for the host countries. And this is not possible with resettlement, but because resettlement is based on the principle that people travel by themselves, leave the country by themselves, reach another country, and then they can be resettled to a third country. So in the case of Syrian, for example, Syrians move by themselves to Jordan, to Turkey, and then a third country allowed the resettlement from Jordan and from Turkey. not in this case. The community sponsorship in the Argentinian model allow people from Syria to reach Argentina directly from Syria. And this is crucial. This is really, really innovative. And this is important to grant an immediate protection. And from the other side, these people do not need to be recognized already as refugee by UNHCR. And this is this made the process faster and easier. But at the same time, when they arrive in Argentina, there is no an institution, there is no the state willingness to help them to apply for asylum. So they remain with humanitarian protection, even if they may have access to asylum and they should be recognized as refugee. So pro and cons, but I think this experience are really, really interesting, even because they are experienced in the global south. And this help us to move our attention to the north, the global north, and the idea that only the global north can help, can do something for the global south, because there are connections between the global south, between countries in the global south, and the community is even stronger than in the global north. The problem is the states. So the attention should be focused on made states in global south stronger, because the community are already strongest. So just focus on these elements to think more about what kind of community sponsorship we can imagine in other countries out of the global the global north, out of Europe, out of United States and Canada, and what we are used to study. So thank you. If you have any questions, please go ahead. I will be happy to answer. Sam, please.
Thank you very much, Marilu.
Firstly, thank you for
There
your
is a question, Daniela, here.
Yeah, okay. No, I just wanted to help with the Q&A. Okay, thanks.
Firstly, thank you because the previous days we discussed only successful examples of community sponsorship. My question is, like, from your perspective, why do you think that a national from maybe Central America could choose Argentina as a country of destination? Because we know that the possibilities there are not so like wide, and maybe like could Argentina use them as a human capital, these nationals from Central America, or no? Like, I want to know your opinion about that.
Thank you for your question. I think you touch very sensitive point, but well, the matter is if the process once arrive in Argentina will be more regulated and safe, it can be a solution in sense of people from displaced.
Sorry, I think that it could like serve as a hub for that in South America region, because we know that like possibilities there are not that great and nice.
Yeah, but if once they arrive in Argentina, they can have access to international protection, it will be different because they have immediate protection from disaster and risk in Central America. But once they arrive in Argentina, they can apply for asylum, and then then they can be recognized as refugee. In this sense, they can have access to a lot of opportunities through UNHCR. They can apply for unicorn corridors for refugees. They can apply for a specific position for refugees, and it gives them more possibilities. If not, if they just stay in Argentina under the humanitarian protection, I see the same risk that you see, because it's more difficult to integrate in the society under this temporary and not stable protection. And Argentina is in economical crisis from, I don't know, 20 years. So clearly also the labor market cannot be so open to hire someone that is in a legal unstable solution, and you don't know if tomorrow will be here or not. So yes, but at the same time, I think it can be a right threshold between immediate protection needs to satisfy immediate protection needs, and from the other side, open more door through refugee status. For people that are displaced because of environmental reason of disasters, it can be more complicated, because we know that these categories of people do not fit well with the 1951 Geneva definition categories. But the Cartagena Declaration in South America is a little bit more flexible. So there are opportunities, there are possibilities to recognize refugee status under this kind of regional instrument. So this can be the case. But yeah, I totally agree that for some of them, go to Europe or Canada will be better in some way. But from the other side, they already speak the same language, they already share some cultural elements. So for immediate protection, it may be easier also in terms of integration. And yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, there are some questions from home. I don't know, Daniela, you know who is the first one, or just open mic and ask question?
Yeah, I guess Ala, but I might be wrong. So maybe they know better than me.
Ala, please go. We cannot hear you. Okay.
Maybe Marilu, if you can close the PPT presentation, it's easier to see the candidate, the participants with the hands raised. Thank you.
Okay. Ala, the floor is yours, but we cannot hear you. Okay, maybe we can wait. Okay. I give the floor to Camilla, and then if Ala have the possibility. Okay. Ala has written his question in the chat. Okay. I didn't see.
Okay, maybe we can give the floor to Camilla first, and then I can read the questions for you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation. I had actually two questions. One is about the policy design of the Argentinian government. So do you know whether actually when people are accepted in this kind of process, do they have access to the reception system of Argentina? If there is one, I'm not aware. I don't know whether Argentina has a reception system in place generally. And the second question would be, do you know research on lived experiences of people who actually accessed this kind of program? to understand how the integration worked in the country, what the perception were, and so far? Thanks.
Thank you, Camila, for your question. So,
Bruno, do you want me to read also the other, or would you like to reply first?
reply. So,
Okay.
Okay, so first question, no, they have no access to Argentinian reception system, basically because there is no a very articulated Argentinian reception system, and this is one of the main problem of sponsor, because they are in charge of housing people, and sometimes they find difficult to do that. So I'm quite sure that they have no access to reception center, reception system, and even if there are trouble with housing. So I read of cases in which a sponsor were able to housing people for the first 6 months, and then they had trouble, they cannot host them anymore. In that case, also in that case, the states was not able to provide housing because the absence of reception system. About the second questions, I had no chance to interview directly people, but I read a lot of studies that were made with people from Syria relocated in Argentina, and where in several cases they decided to come back. There are at least 15 cases, if I'm not mistaken, in which people decide to come back because they were not able to integrate. They struggle to find works, and they struggle to integrate with families. And yeah, for women, it was really difficult because they had no access to well, there are no specific support for women, and men cannot find work. And well, the only positive note were for children. Children had access to school, and they were quite happy at school with classmates and so on. But not for family. They struggle with the language as well, and the main problem was that if they found work, they had no time to study language. But to keep the work, they need to learn Spanish, but they had no time to learn Spanish, and so yeah, the experience were not so positive at all. There are also other very positive experience, but when the community were religious community. So Syrian, for example, Christian Syrians that reach Argentina because there is a Christian Syrian community in Argentina. So in that case, it was a positive experience of integration, but not when there were only a family ties of 20 years ago. They never met each other before, and they were not a community, but only people that host. And for this reason, I can see a very difference between people that decide to sponsor Syrians and communities that decide to sponsor Syrian. In the second situation, it was easier because they help in all the procedure in working, housing, and so on. But when there were only family persons that sponsor it, it was more difficult. Okay.
Excellent interaction. I am going to read the question by Ala, and then I see also other questions, and there is Flavia online. So Ala is asking 2 questions. First of all, the Syrian program was highly visible and low cost, but aided fewer than 500 people, relying heavily on civil society with limited state support. Critics of no additionality, selective focus, and overburdened sponsors raise the question, what is effective integration or just for show? So this is the first question. Was it effective integration or just cosmetic measure? Second question, how can Argentina sustain and scale its climate displacement program, mostly run by NGOs, when the state avoids full integration responsibility? This risks the model's expansion without systemic reforms. So quite challenging question, Marilu. I believe you, and then I'm going to read the others.
Well, that's the main, about the first question, that's the main critic that the international community, the academic community moved to Argentina because say, okay, but it's just for show, because you have relocated people from the other side of the world when you are in a region where there are lots of crises and you are doing nothing for people around you. So this is one of the main critic, and lots of people say, yes, it's totally just for show, is because Macri want to be relevant at international level, because he want to demonstrate that also Argentina can do can be relevant in the political discourse on migration. So yes, all the critics that you mentioned that I tried to underline in my presentation bring at this conclusion, but at the same time, it was the door to open to other initiative. So about the regional focus is because of the critique that Argentina received about the fact that he tried to help people from the other side of the world that open a sponsorship program for its own region. And is because of the critics of the family ties criterion that Argentina decided to open to other criteria and so on. So yes, it is in principle at the political level just for show, but at the practical level, it was really important because based on the critics that this program received, the new programs were announced and were launched, and community sponsorships start to be an idea also in Argentina, to be developed in Argentina. And about the climate displacement program, well, this, yeah, I totally agree, is something that I underline also in my presentation. Without systematic reforms is not sustainable and is not scalable, and is risk to be as the Syrian programs just for few people. But you know, it's the first step. We have to trust that maybe maybe it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of knowledge. It's just a matter of political sensibility. But maybe as the Syrian programs evolved during the 10 years that it was run, maybe also this program can evolve. We are in the first phase. Maybe there will be a second, a third, a fourth phase where state will take more responsibility and the burden will be shared more equitable between states and NGOs. So let's see.
Thank you so much. Shall we now intervene with the Flavia and then go back to the chat and maybe to the room? Flavia.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd just like to make a comment about Heracles' question. So, I'm from Brazil, and in fact, the economic situation in Argentina is not stable, and it's not a destination for economic migrants. But when we talk about refugees, I believe that the main concern is, first of all, to get these people out of the dangerous, life-threatening situation where they are. Of course, we need to think about job possibilities, education, integration. But for someone who is from IT, for example, that is a victim of the 2021 earthquake, or for politically persecuted people from Venezuela, it is much easier to reach Argentina or Brazil rather than European countries. So it's an important step in humanitarian help anyways.
Okay, thanks. I don't know, Marilu, if you want to reply directly.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree in the sense that the first aim is to grant immediate protection. For this reason, I think is really innovative the fact that, for example, it's possible to open this pathway directly from the country of origin of the refugees, because it grants an immediate protection, and it avoid people to cross border by themselves. That is super dangerous. At the same time, so what I already said before, it's important that the procedure to grant protection are super clear, that people are informed about the rights before they leave, and when they arrive in the country of destination, the procedures are clear. They receive the right support for go through this procedure. That I don't know how it is in Brazil, but for example, in Italy is really complicated to be recognized as refugee, even if you come from a country in armed conflict, or you're in evident need of protection. So yeah, I don't know if I get the point of your question. If you want to repeat. Okay, perfect. Okay, so yes, thank you.
Okay, so we can move on. I see further question in the chat. So the first is by Ripidas. My question is, how does community sponsorship intersect with gender? Are refugee women adequately supported and empowered through these programs, or are there specific needs overlooked? In a way, Marilu has already replied, but maybe she wants to add something on this. I also read the second one, so maybe we can, Marilu can respond to both, by Deng Toth Deng. Hi, Prof. It was a very impressive case, although from my end. Okay, so internet was not, okay. The question is, for Argentinian Syrian case, does the community and private sponsor approach both used as mixed integrated approaches or not? If yes, does conflict of interest exist or not? So whether community and private sponsorship were mixed or not, and if yes, if there were a conflict of interest. Okay, so maybe Marilu, if you want to address those two questions, then I move on to the next.
Okay, so it depends about the gender approach. It depends from the programs. I mean, in this case, in the Argentinian programs, we're not so much attention to gender dimension, but in other programs, from Ireland, for example, in UK, there is a lot of attention. So in general, I think there is something that community sponsorship schemes are starting to take in account. In the Argentinian case, there is just in the last program a broader definition of people in needs of protection that includes girls and women from a specific context and especially if they are victim of gender violence. And so, yes, there is more attention in respect to the previous program, but still it's limited to the phase of selection and not in the integration phase. When they arrive in Argentina, there is no specific integration programs and yes, their specific needs may be overlooked. About the private and community sponsorship, if there's conflicts or exists or not. Well, basically in the Argentina experience, at the beginning, they were private sponsorship, and then they switched to the community sponsorship model because they find it more sustainable even for sponsor, because they realized that sponsor felt alone and they felt overwhelmed from the responsibility about integration. So they realized that community sponsorship were easier and better for both sponsor and beneficiary. So there are no conflicts because now in this moment the approach is not mixed, but they change from private to community.
Very good.
Argentina had been accused of being a racist society. This has direct impact on the refugee integration. Well, yes, definitely yes. And one of the element that I found really impressive is that they according to some authors, because I had no direct experience, but Argentinians were more open to integrate people from Syria than to integrate people from the region. They speak the same language, they share lots of cultural and history and so on, but they were afraid of people from Central America, and they were really really close to integrate. It was difficult to integrate them, even more difficult than integrate people from Syria. So yeah, this clearly a point to attentionate when we talk about integration, the society and how much it racist is, and yeah.
Thanks a lot. You got a lot of questions. Let's see if there is some more from the floor in Aula 6.
Okay. No. Maybe we can do 10 minutes break, so, or I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, of course. We are going to resume by 11:25, so to be on
Okay.
time. So I just ask all people online to come at 11:25, because I have still to record all the presents. Okay, so I didn't took for the first hour, so please come back, otherwise I cannot record all the presents. Thanks. Okay. Are you going to share your screen directly, or do you want us to?
No, no, I think that I can share. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So let me check if there is people in the waiting room. Okay, I guess.
We can admit it. Okay.
Я мушу по той посидіти, бо тому що зараз секунді.
Great. Okay, so we can resume the morning session with another key speaker on this comparative analysis we are conducting this morning. So we went through the South-South perspective. Now there's another case study on the North-South perspective, a very specific one, because it's about market-driven refugee resettlement models. The case is Australia, and I have the pleasure to introduce you Dr. Cristina Milano. Cristina obtained a PhD at the University of Tuscia with a thesis on the external action of the European Union in the field of readmission. So she had a chance to study soft law agreements between the Union and third countries for the return of third country nationals. And she also was awarded the title of Doctor Europaeus for the quality and successfulness of her PhD research. Cristina is now working for the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and her main research area are in the field of EU migration, asylum policy, external action, border management, and children's rights. Cristina is going to deal with the North-South market-driven refugee resettlement model, and she will illustrate the case of Australia. Thank you very much for being with us. I'm really glad to give you the floor for the next hour, and then we're gonna open the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. I'm very glad to be here today in another role, so not in the role of a trainer, but in the role of a speaker. And I'm very glad, I'm not glad to be online and not to be able to be in presence. So as Professor Vitiello said, I graduated at the University of Tuscia, so I'm very happy to see some familiar faces. And I currently work at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the Office of Freedom, Security and Justice and Migratory Flows towards the European Union in the Directorate General for the European Union. But I'm here from a personal point of view and academic point of view, so not from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So today I would like to talk you about the so-called Australia Community Support Program that can be considered a kind of community sponsorship program introduced by Australia, established in 2017. My main objective is to underline the key strengths and as well as challenges of this kind of model. And I would like also to understand if this model may serve as a safe and effective complementary pathways to refugee protection. So that could be considered as an alternative that is in compliance, so complied with the traditional asylum procedure, rather than replace or somehow undermine this kind of asylum procedures. This, I think, is in line with the overall aim of this summer training school that is focused on community sponsorship model in general. So before dealing with the main focus of this meeting, so on the community support program, I would like first to introduce you to the Australia's community refugee settlement schemes that actually was the very first model of community sponsorship in Australia. It actually had a duration of about 20 years, so from 1979 to 1997, and it helped to assist over 30,000 refugees in Australia. Obviously, the main objectives was to try to involve refugees in local community, to integrate a refugee in local communities in Australia, and also to provide an alternative to government-run migrant centers, so to an alternative to the opportunities also provided by the Australian government at that time. Obviously, one of the main objectives was also to try to integrate refugees in a rapid way, so as soon as possible, in order to allow them to build a new life in Australia, and also to raise obviously public awareness of Australia's resettlement effort. So it was actually providing alternatives to government-run migrants centers, but also to raise awareness to the possibility to be actually to prove, to try also the other resettlement efforts provided by Australia. The target groups initially were Indo-Chinese refugees, but later this model expanded to also Eastern Europe and Latin America refugees. So as I said, this was a community-based approach, community-based schemes, which were led by private sponsors, such as a voluntary organization. For example, I found this kind of subject, ethnic or church religious, religious entities, but also private individuals. The main aim, the main role of these individuals was to provide housing and employment assistance, as well as English language training that was considered, but I think that is also considering in all the community sponsorship program, one of the main scope, the main objective of this program, and overall to provide an successful integration of refugees. So the language barrier, so try to overcome the language barrier. Actually, the government was responsible for processing and transporting.
Cristina, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but the connection is a little bit unstable. I don't know if this is just with me or also with the room, Marilu.
Yes, even for
Yeah.
us.
So maybe let's try if you close the camera. Let's try, maybe it gets better.
Okay.
Because it's a little bit unstable. So
Okay.
let's
Let's
try. Thank you.
No, sorry, because we have also some jobs outside my terrace, so they doing some stuff with the Wi-Fi. So
Yeah, don't worry. It seems to be fine now. It seems to be fine.
okay. Okay, perfect. I'm sorry to to be black, but I think it's the best solution. So I will say that the main sponsors of this, how can I say, past program were a voluntary organization, ethnic and church, religious in general entities, as well as individuals. So many types of support was provided by this kind of sponsors, such as, for example, housing and employment assistance and English language training that as I said, it was one of the most important objectives of this kind of community sponsorship scheme. Actually, the government was responsible for grants and so from a point of view of money and training for this kind of individual sponsors. However, the Australian government was also responsible for processing and transporting refugees from overseas, so overseas transport to Australia, and in particular to the location where they were supposed to receive assistance. Actually, while this program was effective in promoting community involvement, so it was very successful in promote community involvement as well, and also family reunification. I found in my research that challenges emerged over time. In particular, what were the main challenges? First of all, not sufficient preparation, obviously, of sponsors of private group, and also financial burden on these sponsors groups. As well as difficulties in accessing services in general in the country and employment opportunities. And this was particularly true in rural areas. Actually, furthermore, there was also a reduced oversight, how can I say, a reduced control by the government on the successful implementation of this kind of scheme, as well as actually challenges in logistical support due to funding cuts by the government. So the government was responsible only for the things I said. But obviously this kind of program could not be possible without enough funding from the point of view of Australia. However, despite this kind of limitation, this scheme was recognized for its role in successful refugee integration. So actually the audit that I found were very satisfied by the overall success of this kind of program. So this was the Community Refugee Settlement Scheme from 1971 to 1997. But let's go to the main focus of this meeting. So the Australia's Community Support Program schemes. This was, as I said, established in 2017. But there is any kind of dub on this part? I don't know if there is some kind of dub. So I suppose no. And if you cannot hear me, please let me know. So this kind of community support program in Australia was established in 2017 and actually enables individuals, communities, and business to sponsor refugees in so-called humanitarian need in order to assist them in, how can I say, their journey, their path of resettlement and integration. Actually, in principle, this program reflects the international community made by Australia in 2016 New York Declaration, where states, including Australia, so committed to expanding resettlement opportunities and promote, private sector engagement as part of their responsibility sharing efforts. So Australia wanted to honor its international actually commitments by introducing this kind of support program, because I think that the idea was the past scheme was successful, overall successful, despite obviously challenges, implementation challenges, but now we would like also to to adapt to the new international commitment made by the 2016 New York Declaration. So at first glance, this community support program seems to be consistent with these objectives, offering actually many advantages. For example, it promotes family reunification in the same way of the past scheme, provides a flexible pathway for refugee resettlement in Australia, and seems to align with actually broader global efforts to create alternative pathways to protection. So at first glance, it seems that this kind of program was very compliant with this kind of international community. So, what are the main distinctive aspects of this kind of program? In my opinion, one of the most important most important feature was the fact that it was entirely privately funded. So there was no reliance on public money. Indeed, actually, it depends so on motivated private Australians to take the lead, how can I say the lead, in helping some of the world's most vulnerable persons, so of refugees, in order to help them to start a new life in a hypothetically welcoming environment through community-driven support and inclusion. So this kind of assistance consisted of employment and housing, access to health, education, and community service, as well as social integration in, for example, through sports and cultural groups. So not only the integration from a health point of view, so from, how can I say, the basic needs of a refugee who arrives in a new country, but also integration from a social point of view. So to ensure that this kind of refugees could enjoy also the cultural and sportive actually environment in the country. However, what are the main barriers to participation in the community support program? So it was actually the main challenge, in my personal opinion, of this scheme. These are all the requirements. So you can say from this slide, you can have an idea, no? You can have an idea of the treatments that were provided from this kind of schemes. First of all, eligibility requirement from supporters are very strict. They must be more than 18 years old. They should hold an Australian citizenship, permanent residency, or a New Zealand passport with a protected special category visa. I made some research, but I have to be honest, I did not understand what this kind of protected special category visa actually means, or what are the main requirements also for person to hold this kind of visa. Moreover, so this we are talking about supporters, so sponsors. So another requirement for sponsors, they must sign an assurance of support. Good morning. An assurance of support. What does I mean? This is a kind of, how can I say, a contract where the supporters, so private people, private individuals, are legally responsible for covering government cost. For example, like I say, welfare or health cost for the refugees' first year in Australia. In my opinion, the main aim of this provision is to avoid that the government could bear alone all the expenses, all the cost associated obviously with a refugee in general, with the refugee integration. There is so a financial barrier also, okay? So indeed, I found that in order, according to some analysis, in order to sponsor a family of 5 in Australia, this could cost approximately 53,000 Australian dollars. So you can understand that it's very difficult for a how can I say, a normal person, a normal private supporter that want to support the integration, the inclusion of refugees in their country. You can understand that it's very difficult for them to financial actually bear this kind of cost. And what is the main outcome? This can exclude low-income families, so private individuals, private families that want to actually participate in this kind of program, but they cannot do it. Okay, so from a financial barrier. So I can say that business in general, also private sponsor, are not very willing to invest in this kind of sponsor due to cost versus benefit imbalance. Okay, so it was one of the main barriers of this kind of scheme. I don't know if there is any question on this part. I try to add the Ira, so you can give a face to this voice. Okay, I think that we can do the question later. So I come back to Black. Okay. So, but there are not only barriers for sponsors in this kind of program and scheme, but also barriers to participation in this scheme. So for refugees, for those who want to participate in this program, you want to integrate in Australia. In my opinion, applicants under this scheme face even more stringent, even more strict eligibility criteria. First of all, they must be aged from 18 years old to 50 years old. Okay, they must possess functional English proficiency, and they must have an offer of employment or demonstrate, so a job offer, and demonstrate the capacity to achieve financial independence within a year. Okay. Moreover, they must belong to a priority resettlement case law. Okay. So from a practical point of view, only people, refugees who participated to a previous resettlement scheme in Australia could be considered as eligible for this kind of program. Okay, this restriction often, in my personal opinion, but also in the opinion of the main analysis on this scheme, this restriction exclude the most vulnerable refugees who are in need of resettlement. I mean, in need also, how can I say, also of protection in general. So actually, there is a risk of inequity because this scheme, the access to this scheme may depend on wealth, not urgency of protection. Okay. And some individuals are obliged to resort to loans in order to be considered as a financial independent. And this could cause financial distress for these vulnerable people. I don't know if there are questions. Okay, probably it's only a technical problem. So, okay. We can understand also that given all these kind of requirements, both from the point of view of sponsors, but supporters, but also from the point of view of applicants, you can imagine also that in general sponsors, but also business, prefer to invest in integration and inclusions of refugees who are already in Australia. So they decided to sponsor only refugees who are not in need to enter and then integrate, be included, but refugees that are already in Australia and they participate in this kind of program in order to be fully integrated in the society. Okay, so from this observation, we can actually give some critical consideration. Okay, the fact that this program is theoretically based on the success of Canada's private sponsorship scheme, which I don't know if Professor Luca Galli already told you about this kind of program, or his presence is like settled for the next days. So this
No,
kind
no,
of
Cristina, Luca has already intervened and he addressed the
okay.
Canadian program compared to humanitarian corridors in Italy. So the comparison between Canada and Italy.
Okay, see, perfect. So you already know that actually this kind of Canada's sponsorship scheme was considered as one of the most successful example of community sponsorship worldwide. So the objective of this scheme in Australia was to emulate the scheme provided by Canada, which since the 1978 helped in resettle over 200,000 refugees. This program was based obviously on additionality, so privately sponsored the refugees, this kind of numbers add to government quotas of refugee to be resettlement, and was recognized obviously for his community engagement and state accountability. So this model was influenced, wanted to be based to emulate the program of Canada, but there are many challenges. I try to individuate some of my concerns about this kind of skill. It seems, in my personal opinion, that with this scheme, Australia wanted to choose the person to be integrated. So is wanted to include only person who are characterized by job readiness, okay, because it imposed the need to have a job offers. There are a lot of age limits and the need to possess so-called functional English. In my personal opinion, this kind of requirements may disadvantage vulnerable people. For example, elderly individuals or those without formal qualification, or also household with the caregiving responsibility. It seems to be not a community sponsorship scheme that want to provide protection to those in need of protection, but it seems to be more towards a privatization trend, where the government maintain the control from a political point of view, but it decided to attach the cost to individuals, most of all private individuals, but also to NGOs. For example, I read that also NGOs try to participate in this kind of program, but you can easily understand that it was very difficult for them also to respect all the requirements provided for this kind of scheme. This could, in my opinion, undermine the state commitment to refugee protection undertaken by Australia during its international commitment, for example, the 2016 New York Declaration. So here I try to give you a slide of a person who can easily gets left out by this kind of scheme. Because of financial responsibility, for example, visa application fees, medical screening, first year settlement expenses, because if you remember, we said these expenses must be borne by the private sponsor for the first first year of the refugees in general. So you can understand that it's very difficult to support people who comes from another country in a difficult financial situation in a new country with considered as the so-called Western country, so a wealth country, where the cost of living, the lifestyle is very difficult, very different from the one of the country of origin of these refugees. So in my personal opinion, this responsibility, this requirement may serve more as a government revenue that direct refugee support. And as I said, there are many restrictive applicant criteria that actually do not contribute to actually ensure meaningful protection for those in need of protection. So it seems that this program is presented by the government as an additional pathway for refugee protection, but in my opinion, it falls short of this goal. Indeed, I'm gonna say, rather than expanding Australia's humanitarian commitment, seems to reinforce policies they aim to migration control. So aim to control and also to limit refugee arrivals. And this reflects a market-driven North-South approach, as Professor Vitiello also said in the introduction, that are based on ideas of market. So the more you are ready for the market, the more you can enter in this country. This could actually lead to how can I say, structural flaws that can undermine the aim of creating more pathways for refugees and risk turning community sponsorship into a tool for migration rather than meaningful protection. So so as I say, this is a structure that is more focused on economic pragmatism. So it seems to prioritize the easiest to integrate over those most in need of protection. So it's based on economic pragmatism rather than humanitarian priority, and this could not be considered as the goal of protecting more vulnerable people has been achieved. So in this slide, I would like also to know what do you think about this kind of program, but I think that we can leave the discussion, if you agree, as Professor said later before, to the end of this meeting, because there is an alternative of this kind of program. I mean, I found it as a suitable alternative to the community sponsorship program that I have showed you since now. And it's called Community Refugee Integration and Settlement Pilot, also abbreviated into CRISP as a chips. So it can, my question, and I would like you to help me in answering this kind of question. Could that kind of this an alternative scheme be a good alternative to the community support program that we have analyzed? So actually, the CRISP was the new refugee sponsorship initiative that was launched in 2021, mid 2022. So it was announced in 2021 and it was launched in 2022. Actually, this initiative was characterized by some elements. First of all, it seems to operate as a dedicated settlement pathways for refugees who do not have family links in Australia and are referred to Australia by the UNHCR for resettlement. So also in this kind of program, there are some requirements, but in my personal opinion, for example, the requirement of resettlement, so to be involved in a precedent resettlement caseload that probably is not a very how can I say, very wide requirement, and this could actually limit the number of persons who can enjoy this kind of pathway. So this community refugee integration and settlement pilot was delivered by the community refugee integration, the community refugee sponsorship group, which is a no private organization, no private entity with the Commonwealth government funding. So there is the Ministry of Interior of Australia that participated in the funding of this kind of project. It aims to support 1,500 refugees between 2022 and 2025. Refugees with this kind of program arrive as a permanent residents with all the access of health system, education, and all the service of Australia. So it was born as a temporary program that was considered to last until 2025, but I read like 2 days ago that it will be transformed into a permanent part of Australia's humanitarian migration program, with more than 2,000 places offered by Australia from the middle of 2026, starting month of 2027. So this kind of program stated some requirements, obviously from private Australians to be involved. These help participants. So the main important things is that private sponsors should form a community support group that should include more than 5 adults. They should pass policy and child safety checks. They should complete initial training in order to help refugees to integrate, and should commit to 12 months of hands-on support. So these groups, the so-called community support group, help participants to settle in Australia by providing a wide range of support, okay? And this could help refugees, so participants, for 12 months from their date of arrival in Australia. I forgot to say that these adults of the community support group should form a local group of citizens Australian. They should be Australian residents or permanent residents or citizens. What are the main responsibility? Airport welcome, temporary housing, banking registration, school enrollment, access to English training, or social in general, emotional support. Here I don't know if I can help, okay. I found this very beautiful overview of this initiative. So you can say that the Community Refugee Sponsored by Australia is an independent national non-profit organization that leads in encouraging development and supporting programs in order to improve refugee resettlement in Australia. So you can find all the main objectives of this program, and you can find also all the numbers. Okay, so the country of origin of the participant to this kind of scheme, and all the numbers you can see that are important to understand the impact from June 2022 to July 2024 of this kind of program. For example, more than 2,050 groups engaged, refugee household supporter more than 128, more than 117 arrivals to Australia. And why I decided to speak to you about this kind of program, because I think that in my personal opinion, this could be a good alternative, even considering the fact that is to be made as a permanent program, so not more only from 2022 to 2025, but a permanent model. So this could be actually an important model for refugee integration in Australia for community sponsorship. In my opinion, there are many elements to be improved, first of all, obviously, but I think that this kind of scheme could be considered as a starting point. But I would like guys to stop because I would like to thank you obviously for the attention, but I would like also to open the discussion because I think that is a very interesting point with this requirement. So I would like to from you, what would you change in this program? What would you add? What do you think about this kind of model? Also considering the models that you have studied, I think in this summer school, for example, the one in Argentina that was analyzed by Marilu in the lessons before mine. So I would like to open the discussion if Professor Vitiello agree.
Sure, thank you, Christina. Maybe you can unshare the screen so that we can see you. Yeah, finally, thank you. Thank you so much for this brilliant presentation. Let's open the floor for question now. I am checking the chat, but maybe, yeah, there is Adama. Please go ahead. I actually can't see you, Adama. Okay. Do you prefer to type in chat? Okay. Thanks. Let's check if there are questions from the floor. Maybe Marilu wants to address this.
I'm not able to do nothing.
Sorry?
Okay, he brought.
Okay, so Christina, there is one question in the chat. How can Argentina sustain and scale its climate displacement program, mostly run by NGOs, when the state avoids a full integration response? No, sorry.
I think
Yeah.
Australia was referred to Australia.
Yeah, this yeah, it's a wrong one. So I was reading a question that was already posed to Marilu earlier. Okay. So let's see if there are questions.
Please come here.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
First of all, thank you, Christina, for this insightful presentation. My questions are regarding this program and all, because I don't know if it's acceptable for to ask or demand professionals in like with high skilled people, like at the end we're talking about refugees, we're not talking about job offers. Also, you mentioned that they have to demonstrate like they can be independent financially. How and when they can able to demonstrate this, like before they arrive or after, and what if they failed and do so? I don't know if you can answer these two questions and then I can ask the other one.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I moved a room in order to be, I don't know if it's a good, a better connection. So the things is this. So first of all, the financial proficiency, I mean the financial capabilities are one of the most challenged elements of this kind of program. From the demonstration, I think that it works. I don't know because I did not see the bureaucratic process in order to be considered as eligible for this program, but I think the demonstration should be proved by document. For example, similar to documents provided for obtaining the visa. So, for example, you have two children, okay, you have an house, let's provide for all the incoming, economical incoming, and let's see if you are sustainable, economical, you have the economical possibility to sustain or the cost of this community program. So it's also my sensation that the most important things for the Australian government is to let in migrants in general, but also refugees who are more easy to integrate. So the best ones. I know that it's very and it's not good to say it, but I read so many also report by the United Kingdom that say the program to migration in order to let enter a tot number of migrants, and they choose the migrants who knows English at the level of C1. For example, they have actually a curriculum vitae that is particularly suitable for high skill jobs. And all of this policy, I think, is I mean, how can I say, to sustain, to facilitate the work of the government in order to integrate only what the government consider as the best one. Okay, so this is the fact of the main challenge and the main problem of this program, that okay, it's good, it's a good idea, we appreciate the effort, but it's not enough, because if you do and if you set all these kind of limits, you can let enter in the country only the person that in your opinion, in the opinion of government, could be considered as the best one. So, and this is contrary to the the need to assess the humanitarian needs of the persons. I don't know if I answered to your question, but I think that we have the same doubts about the real efficiency of this model. So there are the main efficiencies. As the financial demonstration, I think that there are the same process in order to have a visa. For example, I don't know where are you from, but I think that if you come to Italy, you have to have a visa and to do a demonstration of your financial capability.
Yes, thank you. And also regarding the visa, I read about the categories of the visa that Australia offers, and I was really amazed because it covers like so many categories, like and broad categories, like people who face persecution, either like inside or outside their home of origin. And also they offer like category for women who face persecution, which is something I think Europe does, but under particular social group. But even like after all of these, the overall recognition of refugees in Australia like is still low if we want to make this comparison between Australia and other countries in the world. So I don't know why.
Yes, no, it's quite difficult. So it's the same idea that the government wants only to let in the people that he considers to be more in danger. So I think that is not that bad. In general, the scheme of Australia, also the last one we have talked about, is not that bad because I know that there is the effort, okay? So contrary, for example, to other countries which, for example, does not have even this kind of schemes. But the problem is that the requirement in general are very strict. So you say the visa for very broad group of persons because they are persons who are in need of protection because they have the eligibility criteria to be recognized as refugees. So I didn't see this requirement for visa in general, but I think that they have also the requirement to be recognized as refugees as enshrined, for example, in the Refugee Convention of 1951. The main problem is to try to design other alternatives that could be suitable to assist all the people in need without this strict and bureaucratic, because it's bureaucracy, this bureaucratic requirement that seems to shift the focus from the need protection to protect the people in need and the need to fill the gap in job world, in the job environment, for example, of Australia. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yes, thank you so much.
thank you to you. Most of these data are also not available yet. So, for example, I work at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and one of the people who work with me said, very interesting, this intervention of Australia, but do you know the numbers of people who were actually integrated or were assisted by through this program? And effectively there is no a very sharp number. I read about 1,000, but they are only very not precise statistics. So it's very difficult also to know if there is an effective mean to protect people in Australia. Thank you so much for your reflection.
Thank you, Christina. I'm going to read for you two questions on the chat. The first is by Ala. How well can Australia offer protection or asylum to internally displaced persons who haven't registered with UNHCR, similar to the approaches in Argentina and Brazil, especially since UNHCR registration can take a year? This is the first question by Ala, and then we have a second question by Adama. What reforms do you think the EU jurisdiction should incorporate to standardize refugee programs to come close to jurisdictions like Australia and Canada? Thank you very much, and thanks to Farah for her questions too.
So thank you for your question. From the first question, actually, I do not know about internally displaced person who have not registered with the UNHCR, but I can say that basing on the requirement stated by both the Community Support Program and the scheme we talk about in the last part of the lessons, they could not access to this kind of programs because they should pertain to the precedent resettlement caseload. So they should have interest by a resettlement caseload in the case of community support program in general, and in a specific case of the CRISP by registration or UNHCR. So I don't know about this internally displaced person registration, but I will do a research if you want. And if you can write me by mail, I will write you the email. I will provide you a question, an answer, because I don't have the answer now. But yes, it's a very interesting question because also Australia could be considered as, I don't know if very interested by displaced persons. I'm thinking about indigenous persons, but I admit that my ignorance on in this kind of view. So I will write, if you can write me, um, I will write the question and try to reply you by email. Thank you for letting me actually for giving me the opportunity also to deepen my knowledge on this I mean this issue. As for Adama, read the book that will be published at the end of the Cosme project, because as Professor Vitiello, I don't know, I think that Professor Vitiello already told you and anticipated you. The main scope of this project is to understand where the European Union could imitate, could be influenced in some cases somehow to build a community sponsor model of the European Union, so a European community sponsorship model. So I think that the answer will be provided. I don't have the answer yet, but I think it is the scope of the book. So we will let you know in November, I think. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Christina, also for this teaser. Of course, it's a very new field of research. Many things are, many aspects of community sponsorship are still uncharted, and that's why we are engaging with this topic with scholars from all over Europe, and we will host the final conference, and we're writing a book on this. So thank you so much also for the spoiler.
Sorry.
Let's check if there are further questions. I don't see hands raised for the moment. Okay, let me hand over to Marilu for the room.
Any question from the room? No.
Okay, so maybe we can close a little bit earlier than expected today, which is good because you are going to have an engaging afternoon with the starting of the second training on the early integration of refugees in Europe. In this case, you will be divided in the same 6 groups as for the first training. Slightly differences can occur, but more or less the groups are going to be the same. The theme and issue assigned to each group will be different, however, because you will be all European Union countries. As you are asked to reason around implementation strategy of early integration in Europe. So you will all be representing different European Union countries. Please note that you have to identify a different group leader. So you cannot have, the groups cannot have the same group leader as for the first training. You have to identify someone else. As for the first training, you will find all relevant materials on the Drive folder. I was updating the Drive folder while you're talking, and in particular, I'm now sharing the link with you in the chat. I also recall that the training leader for today and tomorrow is Marilu Porchia, so you can refer to her for any doubts or problems. And that's it. I'm very glad of the results of this third day. And I'll see you tomorrow in presence. I will be in presence in Viterbo tomorrow with 2 speakers, 2 scholars, one coming from Poland physically, and the second one coming from Venice, Ca' Foscari. So all the session tomorrow morning will be held in presence. We will be all in Viterbo, room 6. Okay. Thank you very much, and enjoy the lunch break and enjoy the
I
train.
would like also to thank you, and I'm very sorry not to be there in presence. I was supposed to be, but it's not possible, unfortunately. But there will be other occasions, and thank you for your question. And I received your mail. I will reply as soon as I go out from the office. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cristina.
Thank you,
Thanks a lot for being with us. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you.
Professor, is this mandatory for us